I decided to make an experiment where I follow different diets for a few days and see how they affect my blood glucose levels. I did a continuous glucose monitor CGM experiment where I compared the keto diet versus high carb diet and where I compared bad carbs versus good carbs. Carbs such as bread, cookies, or white rice versus quinoa, sweet potatoes, and black rice. So why is your blood glucose important? We need to keep blood sugar levels within a safe range to reduce the risk of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, dementia, and many other health conditions. We need stable blood glucose levels that are between 70 to 99 milligrams per deciliter or 3.9 to 5.5 millimolars per liter when fasted and less than 130 milligrams per deciliter or 7.2 millimolars per liter after meals. And the less the better, as anything above normal ranges is toxic. It's called glucose toxicity. Excess glucose causes inflammation, suppresses immune system, and makes you age faster. So just a quick background about me before we get into the foods. I'm healthy, non-diabetic, normal weight, with family history of type 2 diabetes, making me at a greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes in the future. And I'm a nutritionist. For this experiment, I will use a continuous glucose monitor from Freestyle Libre for 9 days and test as many foods as I can that fall in the categories of low-carb keto foods, unhealthy carbs, and healthy carbs. CGM shows your blood glucose levels in real time. So I will finally see how different foods impact my health, and you can have a rough idea of how it would impact you. So enough of guessing, it's time to see what's actually happening in my body. To make this experiment as accurate as I can, I will follow my regular lifestyle. I will wake up and go to sleep around the same time. Avoid excess stress. Don't do any unusual activities. I'll stick with my regular walks once in the morning, once after lunch, and once after dinner. And I will go for a run once or twice to see how it affects my blood glucose levels. And I'm gonna eat when I'm hungry and stop when I'm full. And I will see how each diet affects my blood glucose levels, my energy levels, my hunger and satiety. And just a quick disclaimer, my experiment is not a randomized controlled trial. It's not perfect. In ideal conditions, I should have waited a few days between each diet, as glucose levels might be affected by a sudden dietary change. However, due to limited time, my experiment was done over 9 consecutive days, where I followed each diet for 3 days. And keep in mind that everyone responds to foods and exercise differently, and my results may differ from yours. However, you will learn a lot about how different foods and dietary patterns affect blood glucose levels. There will be 3 days of keto, 3 days of high unhealthy refined carbs, and 3 days of healthy low GI carbs. I will show the photos of meals, grams of carbs in some of the foods, and show how it affected my blood glucose levels. And I will show in both, in millimolars per liter and milligrams per deciliter, as I know my viewers are from all over the world. I started my experiment with my regular diet, a healthy, low-carb, high-fat, moderate protein ketogenic diet. Let's see how it affects my blood glucose levels. What happens to your blood glucose levels and energy levels when you reduce your carbs to around 50 or 60 grams of carbs a day? I started my blood glucose experiment on the 10th of February with the first keto day. I received my CGM around 5 p.m. and my first blood glucose reading was 3.8 millimolars per liter or 68.4 milligrams per deciliter. That's a bit low, but that's probably because my body uses ketones instead of glucose as its primary source of fuel, and it needs less glucose. As I got my glucose monitor later on in the day, here's what I ate so far this day. I had a keto coffee with butter and coconut oil, stevia sweetener, and a piece of dark 90% cacao chocolate. And the same again a bit later, before lunch. Then some non-starchy vegetables, half an avocado, nuts and cheese with a can of sardines for lunch. So then at 17:44, just before dinner, I had some cheese. My blood glucose reading before cheese was 4.4 millimoles per liter or 79.2 milligrams per deciliter. Then 18:05 before dinner, it was 4.7 or 84.6. So for dinner I had 100 grams of organic beef mince with parsley and garlic, fried in grass-fed butter, with 140 grams of steamed cutlets or kale sprouts, with some extra butter added on top, half of an orange pepper, and a chia pudding with chia seeds, organic plain kefir, and stevia. My blood glucose readings after 1 hour, 4.4 millimoles per liter or 79 milligrams per deciliter. 2 hours after the meal, 3.9 millimoles per liter or 70.2 milligrams per deciliter. Then the glucose peak, a bit more than 2 hours after the meal. It was 5.1 millimoles per liter or 91.8 milligrams per deciliter. Then soon after, in about 20 minutes, I was back to 4.2 or 75.6, and it remained stable for the rest of the evening. How well did this meal do? I would say pretty well, with the highest peak at 5.1. That's like someone's fasting blood glucose reading. I had a high-fat, moderate protein, low-carb keto meal with around 522 calories and 13.6 grams of non-starchy carbs. And I had a total of 2,097 calories this day. My macros were 70% carbs, 77% fat, and 16% protein. I had 33.4 grams of carbs, and my blood glucose was nice and stable for the whole day. My average glucose for the day was 4.3 or 77.4. Then the next day, the 11th of February, was my second keto day. My fasting blood glucose at 7:14 was 4.8 millimoles per liter or 86.4 milligrams per deciliter. I checked it again before breakfast at 8:18. It was 5.6 or 108. Then for breakfast, I had a keto coffee and dark chocolate. I've been having the same keto breakfast for around 4 years. A bulletproof keto coffee with dark chocolate with 85 to 90% cacao. Yes, it has some carbs, but the amount is really small. It has 4.1 grams of carbs per serving. It's time to see how it actually affects my blood glucose levels. So at 8:37, it was 5.7 or 102.6. It was the highest peak. Well, not too bad. Then I felt like I have a lot of energy and decided to go for a run. I ran for around 12 minutes with high intensity intervals. Then I came home, checked my glucose, and it was 3.7 or 66.6. High intensity training resulted in hypoglycemia. Very interesting. But then I checked it again in 5 minutes and it was back to 4.4 or 79.2. Then 10:30, I had another keto coffee with chocolate, and at this point my glucose was 5.9 or 106.2. That's quite high, but still in optimal ranges. 1 hour after the coffee, 5 millimoles per liter or 90 milligrams per deciliter. Then I started feeling hungry and had a third keto coffee, just without the chocolate. My glucose was 4.5 or 81. Then I checked again before lunch at 12:27. It was 4.3 or 77.4. For lunch I had half of an orange bell pepper, 5 cucumber slices, 4 cherry tomatoes, 1 tablespoon of kimchi, 6 pecans, 2 slices of Gouda cheese, 3 slices of goat cheese, and 1 can of sardines. Then I went for a walk, and it peaked 40 minutes after the meal, reaching 6.6 or 118.8, which is my highest result so far, but still in the optimal range. 1 hour after the meal, 5.2 or 93.6. Then another peak after an hour, 6.4 or 115.2. 3 hours after the meal, 5.2 or 93.6. 4 hours after the meal, 4.7 or 84.6. Then 18:42, before dinner, it's 5 or 90. For dinner, I had 100 grams of organic pork with fresh thyme, fried in butter, together with 100 grams of steamed asparagus with butter and with 7 cherry tomatoes. And I had a green smoothie with mixed berries, lemon, spinach, and stevia. And I had a chia dessert with kefir, stevia, and berries. 40 minutes after the meal, it reached 6.1 or 109. Then 1 hour after the meal, it was 5.7 or 102.6. 2 hours after the meal, 5.4 or 97.2. Then 3 hours after the meal, the peak of 6.3 millimolars per liter or 113.4 milligrams per deciliter. That's still pretty good, staying within optimal ranges. And then 4 hours after, 4.7 or 84.6. So the second keto day was completed. I was feeling full of energy, I would get hungry just before my meal times, and the average glucose was 4.9 or 88.2. Then let's move to the next day, 12th of February. It was my third keto day. So first glucose test at 7:31 is 6.4 or 115.2. That's a bit strange. It looks like I woke up with diabetes. But then the next time I checked in 7 minutes, it was 4.8 or 86.4. It might be the down phenomenon, where you get high glucose readings early hours in the morning due to a spike in cortisol. Cortisol spikes your blood glucose. Then at 8:31, I had my regular keto coffee with chocolate, and my glucose was at 4.7 or 84.6. And after 1 hour, it was 5.3 or 95.4. Then 2 hours after coffee, it was 4.3 or 77.4. And I'm having my second coffee with chocolate. Then before eating at 12:42, my glucose was 4.6 or 82.8. For lunch, I had a salad with mixed salad leaves, radish, tomatoes, kimchi, olive oil, cheese and sardines, and a chia pudding with cranberries. Then after around 1 hour while walking, I had a peak. My blood glucose was at 5.7 or 102.6. That's still in the optimal range. Then in 30 minutes, it was 4.3 or 77.4, and I had another coffee, this time with organic double cream, stevia, and 1 teaspoon of MCT oil. So around 3 hours after the meal, it was 4.7 or 84.6, and I was feeling great and not hungry at all. Then before dinner at 18:08, it was 4.3 millimolars per liter or 77.5 milligrams per deciliter. Then for dinner I had half an avocado, mixed salad leaves, half of a red bell pepper and some cherry tomatoes, together with red onion and mushrooms, fried in butter, and some extra virgin olive oil and lemon juice. And I had 100 grams of organic beef fried in butter, together with oven-baked crochets with olive oil, and a serving of plain organic Greek yogurt with stevia. So 1 hour after the meal, it was 3.9 or 70.2. 2 hours after the meal, 4.1 or 73.8. 3 hours after the meal, 4.6 or 82.8. And 4 hours after the meal, 4.7 or 84.4. So this meal had a very small glucose response. The highest peak was somewhere around 5 millimolars per liter. So my average glucose this day was 4.5 millimolars per liter or 81 milligrams per deciliter. So this was the end of the third keto day. And my conclusion about keto: you don't need to eat carbs for your body to have stable blood glucose levels. So with these small amounts of carbs, I'm having optimal blood glucose levels. And I feel great. I'm full of energy and I can go long periods of time without eating. Let's see how it goes with carbs. So the second dietary pattern that I wanted to test is a diet high in bad carbs or refined carbs. It's a representation of someone being careless about health and eating tons of sugar and starch. It's similar to what I used to eat before. You will see it's really bad. I would literally have 2 muffins for breakfast. I don't know how did I survive doing this, but I know many people are this careless until something bad happens to them and they have an eye-opening moment. Like, I have type 2 diabetes. It's time to change my diet. So if you are in this group, I hope this experiment will motivate you to make better choices. I tested foods such as muffins, croissant, bread, white rice, cookies, gummies, and even crisps. And trust me, the results were shocking. The 13th of February. It was my first day of bad carbs. This was the scariest part for me, as I planned to go full into eating unhealthy foods. and seeing how it would impact my blood glucose levels, my energy, and my hunger. I woke up with healthy blood glucose levels. My fasting glucose was 4.9 or 88.2. I fasted a bit longer, checked my blood glucose before breakfast. It was 3.2 or 57.6. That's really low. It's hypoglycemia. Then, as I still didn't do my unhealthy carb shopping, I had a keto coffee and a paleo bar that has 18 grams of carbs. Then 11:21, my glucose was 6.4 or 115.2. 3 hours after breakfast, just before lunch, at 13:18, my glucose was 4.2 or 75.6. I did my unhealthy carb grocery shopping, and for lunch I had a ciabatta sandwich with cream cheese, serrano ham, and cucumber. And the ciabatta had 51.5 grams of carbs. Then for dessert I had a coffee with milk and stevia, and a white chocolate and raspberry cookie that had 42.2 grams of carbs. Okay, so I'm gonna check my glucose before having this coffee with milk and a cookie. I just had a sandwich. At the moment my blood glucose is still low. So, okay, let's check what is it now. Okay, my blood glucose is 4.3 millimolars per liter. So at the moment it's still quite low. Let's see what's gonna happen next. This bread plus a cookie had a total of 93.7 grams of carbs. Let's see what impact will it have on my blood glucose levels. 1 hour after the sandwich, 6.7 or 120.6. Then 8.8 or 158.4. I reached my record. Well, at least so far. Then 17:29. My glucose was 4.3 or 77.4. And then as I was feeling a little bit hungry, I had one tangerine that has around 9 grams of sugar. Then 18:51, 7.9 or 142.2. Then I had a handful of gummies. In 10 minutes, my blood glucose went to 10.3 millimolars per liter or 185.4 milligrams per deciliter. That's the new record. I went into high diabetic blood glucose range for 10 minutes. Then it went back to normal. At 19:41, it was at 6 or 108. Around 9 p.m., I had around 7 to 8 sushis with soy sauce. Around 11 p.m., it was around 8.8 or 158.4. Then I was watching a movie and I had some crisps and more gummies. And my numbers reached around 11.5 millimolars per liter or 207 milligrams per deciliter. That's the all-time record. Very unhealthy. I was feeling unwell and quite dizzy. Average glucose this day, 5.2 or 93.6. Then the next day, on the 14th of February, it was my second bad carb day. So my first glucose reading at 9:29 was 4.3 or 77.4. Interestingly, the previous dinner did not affect my fasting glucose. Then I fasted a bit longer. I had my breakfast at around 11:12 and my glucose was 4.7. For breakfast, I had a big serving of breakfast cereal with milk and a coffee with milk. And I can't believe I used to eat this for breakfast before. That's a lot of sugar. In around 40 minutes, my glucose was 9. After 5 more minutes, 9.6 or 172.8. 5.3 or 95.4. That's 1 hour after cereal. Then 2 hours after breakfast cereal, 3.1 or 55.8. That's extremely low. I was buying some food and I felt like I'm gonna faint. I was really weak and had shaky hands. For lunch I had a ciabatta sandwich, 1 tangerine and 1 donut. 1 hour after lunch, 7.7 or 138.6. Around 2 hours, 8.2. 3 hours, 9.2 or 165.6. That's a big jump after hypoglycemia. 7 p.m., 7.2 or 129.6. Then at 8 p.m., dinner. But I didn't have energy or motivation to cook, so I had one tangerine and a serving of granola with milk, and my glucose was 6.3. 2 hours, 8.4 or 151.2. In 3 hours, having hypoglycemia and feeling weak again, 3.2 or 57.6. Then I ordered a pizza and ate around 4 slices at around midnight, and my glucose was 5.6. It reached the peak while I was sleeping at 2:30 a.m. It was 7.8 or 140.4. So my average glucose this day was 6.2 or 111.6. Then the next day, on the 15th of February, finally, it was my third bad carb day. I was feeling really unhealthy and demotivated. My fasting glucose was 4.8 or 86.4. 10:07 before breakfast, 4.9. For breakfast, I decided to test my old breakfast that I used to have a couple of years ago. 2 blueberry muffins and a coffee with milk. Not 1 muffin, but 2 muffins. In half an hour, 7.8 millimoles per liter or 140.4 milligrams per deciliter. That's the peak. I instantly felt dizzy from all of this sugar. I just had 73.8 grams of carbs. 1 hour after muffins, 7.1. 2 hours after muffins, 2.9 or 52.2. That's serious. When I checked online, it says coma can occur at glucose levels in the range of 2.3 to 2.7 millimoles per liter. So don't repeat this at home. Eating muffins is dangerous. I was feeling really hungry and tired, so I had another coffee with milk and I had a croissant. In around 30 minutes, I reached 7.4 or 133.2. Then in 40 minutes, I was at 4.7 again. Then I had 2 more blueberry muffins and a coffee with milk for lunch. In around 1 hour, my blood glucose levels were at 8.2 or 147.6. Then 20 minutes later, 4.7. For most of the day, I was feeling really tired and nauseous. It must be these blood glucose fluctuations. Then before dinner at 18:14, blood glucose 5.2 or 93.6. Then dinner, a serving of white rice and 100 grams of beef, and 1 tangerine for dessert. 1 hour after, 8.3. A few minutes later, a peak of 9.5 or 171. That's extremely high. This portion of white rice was not even big enough. Years back, when I used to eat white rice, I would eat 2 to 3 times bigger rice servings, as it would never make me full. 2 hours after the meal, 4.8. 3 hours, 5.2. 4 hours, 6.1. And the average for this horrible day was 5.9 millimoles per liter or 106.2 milligrams per deciliter. I calculated my calories and my macros for this day. I had 1,865 calories. 49% of my calories were from carbs, 40% from fat, and 11% from protein. My conclusion about bad carbs. This was really rough time for me. Eating these foods made me extremely hungry, tired, and dizzy. I lost motivation to do anything. I can see how badly sugar affected my brain. It almost made me depressed. Good that it was only for a few days and that I'll be able to go back to eating natural whole foods soon. And the last dietary pattern that I wanted to test is healthier, lower GI carbs. A diet that is still high in carbohydrates, but the healthier ones. Foods like black rice, quinoa, low-sugar granola, wholemeal bread, various bars, dairy-free yogurts, and various fruits. I try to increase my carbs and decrease my fats. That is also a representation of my diet a couple of years ago. So the next day, on the 16th of February, I started the healthy carb part. It was my first good carb day. My fasting blood glucose was 5.6 millimoles per liter or 108 milligrams per deciliter, a bit higher than usually. Before breakfast at 8:31, 5.1. For breakfast, I had 50 grams of low-sugar granola with milk and a coffee with stevia and milk. In around 30 minutes, my blood glucose got to 8.3 or 149.4. 1 hour after the meal, 5.2. 2 hours, 5.4. 3 hours, at 11:40, it was 5 or 90. Then I had my second coffee with coconut milk and a raspberry naked bar with 18.2 grams of carbs. In 1 hour, my glucose was 7.2 or 129.6. That's not too bad. But 1 hour after, I'm already hungry. Then at 8 minutes past 1, just before lunch, my glucose was 5.4 or 97.2. Okay, so today for lunch I'm gonna have some wholemeal toast with avocados and lemon. And as well I'm gonna have a salad with red onions, red peppers and tomatoes and olive oil. And as well I will have this low-fat yogurt that is made without dairy. Okay. One hour after, 5.7. After half an hour, at 14:42, it reached the peak at 6.9 or 124.2. Okay, that's not too bad. Maybe the fat from avocado reduced the peak. 2 hours after, 6 millimolars per liter or 108 milligrams per deciliter. In 1 hour, I started feeling really hungry. So at 16:35, my glucose was 5.3 and I had 1 matcha green tea, 1 banana and 1 tangerine. In 30 minutes, 7.5 or 135. In 10 more minutes, 8.4 or 151.2. 1 hour after the meal, still high at 7.4. At 18:10, 2 hours after fruits, my glucose was still high at 7.1 or 127.8. Then I had a dinner. I had a serving of black rice, which is 90 grams before cooking, with half a red bell pepper, and 1 𝑺𝑼𝑴𝑴𝑨𝑹𝒀 blueberry yogurt, and 100 grams of organic pork. And I went for a walk after, as usual. In half an hour, my glucose was 8.6 or 154.8. 1 hour after the meal, 7.9. 2 hours after the meal, 5.8 or 104.4. 3 hours, 6.6 or 118.8. 4 hours, 6 or 108. That's not too bad. I can see that fruits are causing some huge spikes. Average glucose this day was 5.7 or 102.6. Then the next day, on the 17th of February, it was my second good carb day. My fasting glucose was 5.4. Before breakfast, 5.7 or 102.6. And I had a 45-gram serving of granola with 27 grams of carbs, with 1 banana, 10 pecans, 1 teaspoon of chia seeds, 1 teaspoon of sunflower seeds, with coconut milk, and 1 coffee with coconut milk. I wanted to see if adding extra fiber would help anyhow, and tested a common healthy breakfast option I see everywhere on the internet, granola with fruits. In half an hour, 7.9. In 8 more minutes, 8.8 or 158.4. 1 hour after the meal, 7.7. And I'm feeling hungry again. At 10 past 10, blood sugar levels at 5.4 or 97.2. Going back to normal. Then I had a second coffee with coconut milk and a naked bar. In 1 hour, 6.7. Then at 12 past 12, just before lunch, my glucose was at 4.6 millimolars per liter or 82.8 milligrams per deciliter. Again, I had 2 slices of the same wholemeal seed bread, this time with half an avocado and lemon juice, and the other slice with 1 tablespoon of unsweetened peanut butter, and 1 𝑺𝑼𝑴𝑴𝑨𝑹𝒀 cherry yogurt, and a smoothie with berries, spinach, water, stevia, and desiccated coconut. 1 hour after meal, 5.6 or 108. 2 hours after the meal, still 5.6. Then I had my third coffee with a vegan oat flapjack with no added sugar. The name was Sugar Out. This bar had 18.3 grams of carbs. Then in around 1 hour, 6.9 or 124.2. In 40 more minutes, 7.2 or 129.6. At this point, I got really hungry again. At 15:52, blood glucose 5.6, and then I decided to test cherries. I had a pack or 180 grams of cherries and another oat flapjack. In 40 minutes, 7.4 millimolars per liter or 133.2 milligrams per deciliter. 1 hour after the snack, 7.1 or 127.8. 30 minutes later, 4.2 or 75.6. That's a big drop. Then before dinner at 18:28, my glucose was 5.6 or 108. And for dinner I had salad with walnuts, tomatoes, olive oil and vegan mango salad dressing. Then in half an hour I had a serving of quinoa, which was 45 grams before cooking, and I had it with 100 grams of pork fried in butter with garlic and fresh thyme. And I was not really full with this tiny amount of food, so good that I had a salad before. 1 hour after the meal, 5.6. That's really low. Then 2 hours after, 6.1. 3 hours after, 6.7 or 120.6. Then 4 hours after, 5.7. And before sleep, 5.9 or 106.2. So my glucose didn't spike but remained slightly elevated for several hours. My average glucose this day was 5.6 or 108. I calculated my calories and my macros for this day, and I was shocked. I had 2,878 calories. That's probably because I felt really hungry from fruits and various bars. And my macros were 39% carbs, 50% fat, and 11% protein. I wanted to make it a bit less than fat, but that's probably the avocado or peanut butter. Then the next day, on the 18th of February, it was my last good carb day. My fasting glucose at 7:31 was 5.6 millimolars per liter or 108 milligrams per deciliter. That actually indicates prediabetes. Then before breakfast at 8:35, 5.7, still in prediabetes range. Then I had 1 keto coffee, couldn't resist, and 1 oat flapjack with 18.3 grams of carbs. I wanted to see how would fat with carbs do. In 1 hour, 8.1 or 145.8. Last time I had a flapjack with simple coffee, it reached 7.2. So fat actually increased the spike now. Or maybe I'm more pre-diabetic today. Then 2 hours after breakfast, 5.3 or 95.4. And I was feeling a little bit hungry, so I had a snack. I had 1 tangerine, and it has a glycemic index of 40, which is considered low. And I had 100 grams of cherries, GI 20, also low, and 14 grams of acacia powder. It's a fiber supplement. I'm gonna see if it reduces the glucose spike. Well, not really. In 30 minutes, 8.1 or 145.8. Then having another keto coffee and 90% cacao chocolate. Glucose 8.4 or 151.2. Then soon after, 4.4 or 79.2. This is more of a paleo diet. 13:03 before lunch, 4.8 or 86.4. I cooked 1/4 cup of quinoa and made a quinoa salad with salad leaves, half an avocado, half a bell pepper, mango salad dressing and olive oil. And 1 hour after, my glucose was 6.5. 2 hours after the meal, 7.6 millimolars per liter or 136.8 milligrams per deciliter. Then in 1 more hour, 6.2, and I'm feeling a bit hungry again. Then at 16:20, I had a chia dessert with kefir and stevia and 100 grams of cherries. 30 minutes after, 7.8 or 140.4. 1 hour after the meal, 7.5, still too high. 2 hours, 6.7 or 120.6, getting a bit lower. Then I went for a walk before dinner. I had dinner at 19:18 and my glucose was 5.4 or 97.2. It's time to try sweet potatoes. So I had 1.5 steamed sweet potatoes with 100 grams of organic pork, mushrooms and onions. 7.2 or 129.6. Then 2 hours after the meal, 6.8 or 122.4. Then 3 hours after the meal, 6. 4 hours after a meal, 5.4. And then 20 minutes after, just before bed, 6.7 or 120.6. So again, it didn't spike too much, similarly to quinoa, but it kept my numbers elevated for several hours. My average glucose this day was 5.4 millimolars per liter or 104.4 milligrams per deciliter. So what interesting did I learn from this continuous glucose monitoring CGM experiment? I noticed that times when I had the least blood glucose fluctuations, I was feeling great. I was full of energy. Then times when I ate refined carbohydrates, I had huge blood glucose fluctuations. I was not feeling well. I had low energy and was feeling unhealthy. I had energy crashes and constant hunger. I felt that I could eat the whole day. A few times I had severe hypoglycemia after the meals. When I went shopping and after eating a sandwich and a cookie, and I felt that I'm gonna faint in the shop. So really, the refined carbs made me feel the worst, and I had the biggest fluctuations. When I'm on a healthy low-carb keto diet, I have stable blood glucose and tons of energy. And when I eat carbs, especially fruits and other sugar or things like white rice, I have huge glucose spikes, energy crashes, and I feel that I need to eat all the time. Eating fruit was bringing my numbers to diabetic levels. That's something to consider. One important thing to mention, there's not only blood glucose that is important when looking at how different foods affect our bodies. How our food affects insulin levels is just as important. If you look at type 2 diabetes, it's a condition where you have elevated glucose and elevated insulin, and both are just as bad. And of course, continuous glucose monitoring device won't show you how different foods affect your insulin levels. However, you can use this insulin index table as a guideline to see how different foods affect your insulin levels. Keep in mind that many low GI foods such as wholemeal bread or brown rice, are low glycemic index foods that are even recommended for diabetics. And sadly, these foods are some of the worst on the insulin index scale, meaning it causes huge insulin spikes. For example, the day when I ate wholemeal bread, maybe I didn't have high blood glucose spikes compared to some other high carb foods that I ate as well during this experiment. However, it doesn't mean that it's healthy. So take blood glucose readings with a grain of salt and keep in mind that it shows you only half of the equation. A CGM helps you to learn about how different foods affect your body so that you could make healthier food choices in the future. The best way to know how your body will respond to certain foods is to measure it. I highly recommend you to try out using this continuous glucose monitoring device for 2 weeks. That's all you need to experiment. Try out as many foods as you can and have the actual results showing how your body responds to it. And you don't have to be diabetic to try using CGM, this continuous glucose monitoring device. Why to wait until you get diabetes if you can learn about different foods and even prevent yourself from getting diabetes? So if you're interested in trying out this device, I'll leave the link in the description below where you can order a CGM continuous glucose monitor that will change the way you see food. And if you've enjoyed watching this video and learned something new, don't forget to like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And feel free to share it with other people who innocently eat a lot of carbs without understanding the consequences. Education is where it all starts. Knowing the truth motivates you to make better choices. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.